Hey, shalom, shalom, mishpocha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda Ben Shomer, and today I'm going to ask the question, what does it mean to refrain from doing one's own pleasure on the Sabbath? This question is posed, taken from Isaiah 58:13 through 14. Let me read that for you. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call my Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord honorable, and shalt honor him, not doing thine own ways, nor finding thine own pleasure, nor speaking thy own words, then shalt thou delight thyself in the Lord, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken it. I remember one time when I was involved with a synagogue, some of the leadership had planned a spiritual retreat, a camp out, which bled over into Shabbat. And after Shabbat, we had already lined up other speakers for the congregation, so that was all set. And we already made our preparations beforehand so we didn't have to work on the Sabbath, like light a fire, which is a prohibition, collecting firewood, which is a prohibition, etc. We could just worship and enjoy on the Sabbath, and we had, everything pre-prepared. And some of the congregants got irritated and kind of pointed their finger and quoted this verse at us, accusing us of doing our own pleasure on the Sabbath, which indeed, camping is a pleasure for me. I love to camp. But on the Sabbath, it's an even greater pleasure to worship the Lord in the sanctuary of nature, out there in the wilderness, imagining what it was like when the children of Israel were in the wilderness and worshiped God on the Sabbath. Wow. I even remember one time when I participated in a Shabbat service which was on a beach. They put the candles in the sand, lit the candles, and we had Shabbat, did the blessings and everything. Then we sang songs and talked about the Torah. It was great. Wow, what a Sabbath that was. So is that wrong? Well, everybody goes on vacation. Everybody needs a break from their work and from everyday mundanity of life. So it's bound to happen that somebody's going to be on vacation during the Sabbath. It is our duty to either find a like-minded congregation in the area or use that day to somehow creatively rest and worship God with one's family or oneself on the Sabbath day. So, what is Isaiah 58:13 through 14 really saying? Okay, let's just take it little by little, okay? It says, if thou wilt turn away. The Hebrew word is shuv, where we get the word teshuva, which means repentance, which repentance means to do a 180, to turn around. In other words, if we turn away from walking on the path on the Sabbath, we turn away from doing the right thing, we go the wrong way in regards to observing the Sabbath. If thou wilt turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day. So what does it mean to do one's pleasure on the holy day? Well, the Hebrew here implies doing a creative work, to fashion, to make, or to produce. This relates to one's occupation, one's work, where you actually work on the Sabbath, where, if you're a welder, you weld on the Sabbath. If you're a farmer, you plant, you reap, you sow on the Sabbath. If you're an accountant, you crunch numbers on the Sabbath. If you are a writer, you write for a column in the newspaper or whatever on the Sabbath. This is what it's talking about. It's talking about one's own pleasure. It's talking about somebody who loves their job and who takes pleasure and pride in their work. Sabbath is a day to where we refrain from creating, from making a living. In other words, we step back from it and let God recreate us. We let God do the recreating by resting is a form of recreation, where we're not doing the creating, God's doing the creating. We're resting, we're rejuvenating. So, from doing thine own pleasure on my holy day, which means work, it implies work. Okay? And call the Sabbath, let's see. Alright. From doing thine own pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight. So, in other words, we are to call the Sabbath a delight. We're to delight in the Sabbath rather than, more so than making a living, than working on the Sabbath. And I know a lot of people have this false and weird idea of what Sabbath is all about. They think that they're just sitting in a synagogue and it's all boring and they hear somebody chanting from the Torah and, oh, I wish I was, home watching cartoons or what have you, and they just think it's all boring. And it's not a delight, and they're like, wow, if that's what delighting in the Sabbath is, I don't want any part of it. But that's not what the Sabbath is. Sabbath, delighting in the Sabbath is we're supposed to have the same zeal for resting and worshiping God on the Sabbath day as we do for a job that we love. And it's like a relationship. At first it may seem a little awkward, it may seem a little scripted, a little rote, but so is it in all relationships. Like when you first met your spouse, for those who are married, I'm sure it was kind of awkward. You're like, oh, geez, what do I say? Oh, man, this is weird. But once you just relaxed and opened yourself up, you began to warm up to each other, you started to flow, and then the intimacy started to build and started to grow and started to develop. And then it was a delight to be around this person instead of weird and awkward. And that's kind of like with the Lord. The more time we spend with Him, the more we open up ourselves to Him, the more of a delight it is. And call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable. Okay, holy means set apart. So in other words, the 6 days of the week that are resigned to the common, to the mundane, to work, to routine, we break from that, and we have the Sabbath, which means to rest, and the Sabbath is holy, which means it's set apart. It's set apart because it's special, because it's unique. It's different from the other days of the week because we don't do the same things we do on the Sabbath that we do every day of the week. Honorable. So what does it mean? Honorable. Well, honorable carries the connotation of weightiness, of depth, of richness, of glory. So in other words, if we delight in the Sabbath, we call it a delight, holy unto the Lord, and honorable. It means that we get so much richness, so much depth, so much glory out of the Sabbath, and shall honor Him. In other words, when we honor Him and glorify God on the Sabbath, He in turn pours His glory, pours His richness into us, and we bubble and overflow, and it spills back on Him, and in turn we bless God all over again. It could be equated to giving a gift to your loved one, somebody that you love, and you see their eyes pop out, and they're like, oh, and they gasp at the gift that you so meticulously chose for them. And you're blessed because they're blessed. You're blessed and all excited, and you get all happy just seeing them happy over what you've gotten them. That's why it says it's better to give than to receive. And this is like the Lord. He gives the Sabbath to us as a gift. And when we see our delight on resting in the Sabbath and being with Him, like, we're so excited, and our eyes pop out, and we gasp, and we're like, oh, wow, thank you so much. God gets tickled at that, and God gets blessed at that. So this is going to end up being a two-parter. And shall honor Him, not doing thine own ways. Okay, we're going to save this for part 2. And thanks for watching. Shalom and Shavua Tov.